So if you say to me, I can't start investing 20% right now because yes, I acknowledge that I'm overspending, but until I get to that place, what can I do now? You can start investing 5. Then you can start investing 10, just like upping your weights in the gym. You can do 15. But the only way that you can do that, business and personal finance are always the same. You can either increase your income or decrease your expenses.
The goal of the Best You podcast is to allow you to feel confident about what you need to do, why you need to do it, and how to do it in order to get closer and closer to your best you. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Best You podcast. I am really excited today to be joined by the one and only Candy Valentino. Candy, I just want to start off by saying thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So to give everybody just kind of a brief little overview of your story, you grew up with a family that was not really well off. Your dad was a mechanic. Your mother was a cleaned houses, and from a very young age, you were always dropped off after school at 5 years old at your dad's business. And so you always kind of saw them really working hard, and that's probably where a lot of your work ethic came from. But as you kind of talk about, you guys were never really all that well off, and it kind of led you to wanting to build something really big and make a lot of money. But I'm kind of interested because I always feel like sometimes people who maybe were born into a family that was not well off, they don't have that model for success. They don't have that person that they look up to. They don't know exactly what success looks like or what making a lot of money looks like. And so sometimes that can lead people to maybe thinking small and not having the ability to think big because they have never seen it or they haven't had anybody to teach them that. But it seems like you, from a relatively young age, have had the ability to think big. So I want to ask, when did that ability start, and how did that kind of enter your mind to be able to think big and dream big and want to make a lot of money?
It's a great question. So I think, oftentimes we just don't know what we don't know. And so that viewpoint that someone may have, that this is all that life is, if someone's struggling with that right now, that's totally acceptable, because until we are exposed to new ideas, new people, new just things that you can do with life and have those experiences, we don't know that they're possible. And so for me, I think what one of them was a lot of the clients that came into my dad's garage, like being able to see the guy that brought in his black Ferrari, and, the chiropractor down the street that brought in his yellow Cadillac, and, just to kind of understand what people do. I at least got a little bit of that exposure. Also, the lady that owned the building that my dad rented off of was a female. So wow. Every month she would come down and, all this gold jewelry, too much perfume to collect my dad's rent. And I kind of got to just have life lessons. So although I'm not educated, I didn't grow up in a family with education or a lot of experience in that regard, we have seen a lot of life lessons, and just that's what's kind of been built over throughout my life. And then really books. I mean, that's really why I even wanted to write a book to begin with, is because that helped me so much. Reading books, most people were 19 years old in college and partying on the weekends. I was running a business and in my office reading every single book I could get my hands on to figure out how the hell to run this business and actually make money. So I think that a combination of just, we always have the answers around us, but it's what we pay attention to, and also what we feed our mind with, getting into books, getting new ideas so that we can expand that vision of what's possible.
Yeah. I think you said it. Oftentimes you just don't know what you don't know. And I think that oftentimes to gain clarity on where you should go next, you just need to expose yourself to different things. And sometimes that can provide you with a little bit of a path in and of itself. So like you said, when you were 19, when you started your first business, was it really books that that allowed you to learn the business skills necessary to keep that business afloat? Or if so, or if there was anything in addition, what was it?
Yeah, well, first it's having the belief that you can, because otherwise we're going to just perpetually play the tape in our mind of why we can't. And we always get what we focus on, right? So if we think that we're not going to, or this isn't going to be successful, I'm going to be a failure, well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I was just a little crazy enough, bold enough, and just confident enough to think, if somebody else could do this, why can't I? So it's having that unwavering belief to start and not have all the answers. I always say you don't need to know the 110, turn by turn step directions to go from Scottsdale to Sedona, but you got to know what that end destination is or you're never going to get there. So I had through books, through exposure of other people. And then once I started the business, I had the most amazing clients that I was able to be like, oh my gosh, like I love how that woman who's 25 years ago, I was 19. She was now my age. And I was looking up to her as being like, oh, I love how she interacts with people and, just all these different influences that we have in our life. But it really starts with having the belief it's like we always have the proof of what we're looking for. If we want to have the proof that we're going to fail, then our brain's going to sort and sift through all this stuff that we've done in our lives and where we haven't been successful. But if we want the proof that we might be successful in this new thing, we also have people all around us, especially now that the internet has everybody on social media sharing their wins. We see all sorts of people that have actually done it, and we can pull from that as well with whatever it is that we want to accomplish.
So is that where a lot of your belief came from, is proof from other people? Because I know that, everybody gets self-belief and self-confidence from different things. And I know for me, for example, I got a lot of self-confidence and belief in myself because my parents always believed in me and they always taught me to believe in myself as well. And then through hard work and everything like that and seeing kind of hard work pay off with results has given me belief as well. But if I don't know exactly, maybe it was parents, maybe it was proof from other people. What was the thing that allowed you to have such a high level of belief at such a young age when maybe your parents didn't have that model of success?
Well, first I had a lot of leverage. So that plays a part too, right? I had a lot of leverage to be successful. But as far as where maybe I got it from, when I was 15, I had a babysitting business. I had a golf ball business and I got a Discover credit card. My dad wouldn't give me the $600 that I needed to buy these motivational tapes online, even though I had the money. So I do not recommend this. I fraudulently filled out the Discover card application. They used to be paper back in the day, sent it in, and somehow I got a Discover card at 15. So I ended up buying these tapes and I sat in my bedroom and listened to them one by one by one. And so that was my first exposure. And, it's very interesting. A lot of times people grow up in a more common familiar unit with parents. But when you have teenage parents, like I did, we kind of grow up together, right? Because what do we know at 16? Like when you're going to have a baby at 16, it's not like you put a lot of thought and time of how you're going to raise this child and what beliefs you want to instill. So we kind of grew up together. But the interesting part is if you don't have a lot of external noise telling you what to do, you find it on your own. So I think my confidence and my belief was because I found out how to do things on my own because I didn't have that external guidance of always what to do and what to say and what I should believe. So I think every human, regardless of their background or their experience in life, we all have this like internal gut instinct, but oftentimes we're waiting for permission. We're waiting to somebody else to have validation to our idea in order to do it. Meanwhile, we've known all along that we should do this, but we delay because we're allowing our mind to tell us as opposed to that instinct. So for me, I've just listened to that really intently, even when it doesn't make sense, even when I have no proof that it's going to work out. Like when I always tell the story when I exited my last company and I moved from Pennsylvania to Arizona, I knew nobody here. But I instinctively knew I needed to be here, even though I had friends in California and Texas and Florida. But I just knew. And then it's like 6 months later, it all gets revealed to you of why you needed to do that. But in the moment, you just got to listen. And so I think for me, it was not having all of that noise, but I was then open-minded to the books and the other ideas and to just taking that first step because what else? I mean, it's not a big deal if it doesn't work out. You just take another step and do something else. And I think people get caught up in that identity of failure. And that's what prevents them from ever achieving anything great.
Yeah, no, I like what you said, that if you don't listen too much to the external noise, sometimes you can find the answers internally. However, I think sometimes people can take that maybe too far and say they trust their gut to make a particular decision. And sometimes trusting their gut is taking action because of fear of failure. So how do you internally almost separate when to listen to the gut, listen to your instincts internally because it is actually guiding you in the right direction, whereas maybe you're trying not to listen to your instincts because it's something like a fear of failure or something like that.
Yeah. So there's a difference between instinct and fears, right? So the instinct that we have is the guidance of like, you should do this, or maybe this doesn't feel right now. Maybe you shouldn't do this right now. There's a difference between, I feel like I should do this, the but. It's like the yeah, but I call it. Yeah, I should do that, but what if X, Y, Z? That's you. That's your own fear. That's your own crap, your own BS beliefs that are popping up. And so it's the first thing. And it's also the constant thing, right? And I'm not very woo. I'm very tactical and implementation. But if people sit and they wait for like the answer to come, like it's never going to come. Like clarity comes in motion. We get clear in what we want and what we should do by doing. So even if you think like, is this my instinct or is this my fear? By you taking the first step in the action and moving forward, you're going to quickly see which it is. And then it's like, again, it's just your guidance to know. And like anything, the longer you do something, the more experience you have in it. Like I'm so in tuned with it now that it's pretty loud and I don't ignore it. But when I was younger, it took me a while to kind of figure out like, oh, should I do this? But again, our fear is always louder than our instinct. So making sure that if you do feel like, oh, maybe I should start this business, or maybe I should start to build wealth, or maybe I should, and yet then that noise kicks in of why you shouldn't, or how you failed, or what's somebody going to say, that's all fear-based. Take the first step anyways, start anyways, and then figure it out as you go. That's the only way that you can learn. You either learn through mentors, people that have done it, or you learn through your own mistakes. But if you don't do either, you're going to stay exactly in the same position that you are right now.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that distinction between instincts and fear, and how you talked about instincts are something that are kind of always there. But for now, I kind of want to dive into the meat and potatoes of wealth habits, because I'm personally super excited. I have the book pre-ordered, so I'm excited for it to get here, and I know everybody will be excited when we dive further into some of the content as well. And we'll get into some habits when it comes to like income investment, retirement accounts, and spending and things of that nature. But I kind of want to dive into something that I think is just a really important foundation to know conceptually. And so one of the things that you talk about is how you don't really want to spend earned money. You want to save that money, and then you want to invest it into assets that appreciate and create cash flow for you. And you allow that cash flow to be your source of spending, essentially. And so I kind of want you to further explain exactly that framework again, and give people a little bit better idea of what that looks like and means.
Yeah. So the concept is you never want to spend earned money. So meaning you don't use your earned money from your job or your business to buy depreciating assets, boats, cars, whatever, shoes, the luxury items. You take your earned money, and there's obviously some caveats that we teach in here, is making sure that you live below your means so that you can invest more, that you can take 20% of your earned income and immediately invest it into diversified investment vehicles. And someone might say to me like, oh, 20%. There is one line that I can give anybody listening that I can tell you if you're overspending in one sentence, how you answer this. If you can't take 20% of your earned income right now and invest it, you're overspending. Because you're spending so much on your bills, your cars, your home, whatever. You have overextended yourself to the point where now you can't invest in yourself and in your financial future because you're living in the financial reactive state of now. So the sooner that you can take earned money and start immediately investing 20%, and it's about building the habit. I know you're into fitness. It's like going into the gym. If you want to pick up the 25-pound weight, you got to start with the 5. So if you say to me, I can't start investing 20% right now because yes, I acknowledge that I'm overspending, but until I get to that place, what can I do now? You can start investing 5. Then you can start investing 10, just like upping your weights in the gym. You can do 15. But the only way that you can do that, business and personal finance are always the same. You can either increase your income or decrease your expenses. That's it. It's literally simple. We throw into business and money, we throw into all of these emotions and personal crap that we have, all this baggage, but it's really 2 things. You increase your income or you decrease expenses. That's it. So if you want to invest that 20%, what are you going to do? You either need to earn more, which is one of the habits to building more wealth. You earn more money by setting up something on the side that what you're currently doing, maybe a business, maybe a freelance position. You go on Upwork or Fiverr, or you flip products on eBay, whatever makes sense for you. You earn more so that then you can invest more. You're not earning more so that you can buy a bigger house. It's one of the most common things that I've seen, especially at this age, looking back. It was almost a little luck that I got these books so quick, right? Like I got these books at such an early age. So I didn't do a lot of the stupid things that most people do when they start to make more money. I've always lived, like as an example, I've always loved a Bentley and a Rolls Royce, and I could have bought them a bazillion times. And I just can't stomach it because I think rather than driving this, I can have a cash flowing asset printing me money. And so if the car is that important to someone, buy the house and buy the rental property first that will pay for your car payment or pay for that car, whatever it may be. But maybe you realize at some point that that's actually not what life's all about. That if you don't set up financial freedom and you don't set up investments, you will constantly be trading time for money. And really, when we studied all of the wealthiest people in the world in writing this book, what everybody wants is actually freedom. That's the whole reason to build wealth, so that you can go where you want, with whoever you want, as often as you want, and spend whatever you want, bless as many people as you want. You know, that's why I started a nonprofit at an early age, to give back, because giving is a big part of building wealth too. So I don't actually know if I answered your question. I may have gone off on a tangent, which I do sometimes, but
well, no,
core.
That was perfect. That was perfect. And we're getting ready to go right back to a follow up on that. But I just was interested when you brought it back up again, the books that you read it early on. Where did somebody tell you to read these books, or were you just very interested in money and so you've looked up popular money books and you found Think and Grow Rich and all those ones? Like, what exactly introduced you to them?
Back in the day, there was the internet. Like I want to think that the only thing we had back then was like AOL chat rooms. And it was where like there was a lot of sketchy people. So you didn't want to hang out in the AOL chat rooms too much. But I just went to like the Barnes and Noble and went into money and finance section. And then it was like looking, and it was asking questions. It was being inquisitive, asking the people, because I didn't know. So I asked the people at Barnes and Noble, like, hey, what's a really great book about money? And at the time, it was Think and Grow Rich had just come out, and Smart Women Finish Rich by David Bach. And that book was absolutely life-changing for me. And then it was The Millionaire Next Door. And then that was about real estate. So it was really those three books. Then it was The Magic of Thinking Big. And then in my business life, I was studying the Ritz-Carlton company, the Starbucks company. Like, we don't have to, like, a lot of times people think that wealth is elusive, that we have to innovate some incredible product or charter a rover to Pluto or do something like. I haven't done anything life-shattering. It's all been very ordinary and often boring things that I've done, but I've still been able to find and figure out my way. And these are all tools that even the poor kid in the small town have access to. Is a $25 book and another $25 book when you have that. And then you take that $25 book and you sell it back to Half Price Books, and they give you a credit to buy a new book. And you continually invest in yourself and in your knowledge, because that's one of the ways that you earn more wealth. You learn your way to more wealth. And that's literally what I did before I had any idea of what wealth actually was.
Yeah, no doubt. That's great. I love that. So I'm going to go back to kind of what you said earlier, right? Everybody here needs to be taking at least 20% of what they're currently making and saving it and investing it. So let's talk about if somebody who is early on in that game, where should that 20% be going? Should it be going in stocks? Should it be saving up for real estate? Talk about where that money should be going, and at what point should it be utilized for maybe a purchase of one of those appreciating assets. We'll be back to the interview in just a second, but first I wanted to share some words from a participant of the 10-week transformation. At Best You, we started running the 10WT back in January of 2020 and have since had 313 people and counting go through it. They've seen their bodies get stronger than ever before, they've seen the stubborn fat finally come off, and they've seen their habits dramatically improve. And honestly, more than anything, they've seen their self-confidence skyrocket. If you want to learn more about the 10-week transformation, then you can go to nickcarrier.com/10WT. That's nickcarrier.com/10WT. We'll get back to the show in just a second, but first, here's what they had to say.
I'm Nina. I joined the 10-week program one, for friends, and then two, because I know that Nick always structures his workouts with a lot of intention behind everything. There's always a method behind the madness, and it's not just like a bunch of jumping around to raise your heart rate, essentially. Like, there's always a reason why you're doing everything. I've been able to maintain a lot of my strength, and I'm training for a marathon right now, and so like my mileage is crazy and just a lot of cardio. But with like doing his workouts this week, I've been able to maintain a bunch of strength last 9 weeks. My favorite part of the program is honestly probably the people that I've met through it. I've just been able to make a lot of friends, and it's just a fun time at 5 a.m. You should join Nick's 10-week program.
Great question. So number one, you never want to be saving your money. Saving your money, if you're going to get 1%, 0.5%, 0.2% in a money market or any other type of vehicle, you will lose money because of inflation. So the only time that you are actually saving money is if you understand taxes. And that's in the book, understanding how to use taxes, just like all of the rich and all of the super big corporations use. So first, you're going to want to take anything that you can save right now, 5%, 15%. And the only way that you're going to know this is to really start understanding your personal finances. Like, we tend to ignore that we don't know. And the only way to understand it better is to start paying attention to it. And oftentimes people bring all these emotions with them, guilt, shame, embarrassment, anxiety around their numbers. But if you don't start to do it, you will never develop this talent or skill. So the first thing is, whatever you can do now, you need to use 20% as your benchmark. And if you can't do that, you have two questions. Do I want to earn more, or do I want to save by spending less? Either earn more or save by cutting your expenses. Those are the only ways. And if you decide that, okay.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, before you go on to the next level, I know you're maybe gonna wrap up that point real quick, but when you say, I know what you mean when you say you should never be saving, you should never put in a savings account where it's only making 1%, less than 1%, a little bit more than 1%, depending on the time. Do you have no money in that? Do you have a little bit for emergencies, or do you have everything in something that can make you more than that? Or
so the only thing
nothing?
You ever have liquid is your emergency fund. And the only way to decide how much you actually need is anywhere from 3 to 12 months. That's a wide range, right? A quarter of your salary or a year of your salary. The only way to know which would make most sense for you is how easy would it be to replace the job or the business that you have should something happen. And if you're in a high demand industry, or you have high demand skills or talent, maybe three months is fine for you. But if it's something that you're very specialized in and the world is changing constantly, maybe you need 12 months. That is the only thing you want liquid. And you want that to be in a separate account that's not your checking account. You literally put that in there and you forget that you have it. And this is what most people mess up, because they think they can keep dipping into it. The goal is not to dip into it. The goal is to just have it there, almost as the Brinks truck of your life. That this is, God forbid something happens, I have this protection. That is the only thing you want to save. You're not actually doing anything with that money other than for protection. Aside from that, let's say you have that done, which should be done, because again, if you can't invest 20%, that means you probably don't have an emergency fund, which means if something happens to you tomorrow, you're like my dad, for example, was in a horrible motorcycle accident. He hasn't worked for months. Most people don't think that happens, but millions of Americans every single year are in horrible accidents that are life-changing. Even if they're not life-threatening, they're life-changing. So the fact that we think it's never going to happen, it actually is a greater chance of happening than just about anything else in our life. So having that Brinks truck saved is crucial. Then the next part is for somebody that's brand new, is you want to start, if you're eligible. So if you make under, say, $135,000 net a year, you're eligible for a Roth IRA. This is literally the number one hack that every single person listening should do. And if you already do it and you have kids, it's the first thing you should set up for your kids in order for your kids to become wealthy. More so than a 529 or any of these college plans, maximizing a Roth IRA, which currently is $6,000 a year, over the industry average. So over 40 years, when I did my research, the average was 9.3%. Interest was paid over a 40-year time. So the earlier you start doing that, and if you just did that, $500 a month, $6,000 a year, you would be able to have over several millions of dollars, depending on how old you are, when you go to retire. So that's really like the basic bare bones. And then if you already have those things and you're maxing out, if you have a job, if you're maxing out your 401k or your IRA, whichever you have with your job, now you want to start looking at, okay, I have my emergency fund. I have my Roth IRA. I'm maxing out, these are all of the more safe, secure vehicles. Now maybe you want to take it up a notch and get better returns, because investing, you either get average returns or above average returns. Average returns are typically pretty safe, like what we talked about. Above average returns are obviously going to have a little bit of above average risk, and they're going to need above average research in order to get into them. So that's when you want to start then saving, and I'm using air quotes if we're not on video. You want to save up in your investments in order to then purchase a real estate property or something else like a commercial unit or something later down the road. But you don't even want to, a lot of times it's like something about the social media world. People want to like glamorize certain things. Like entrepreneurship has been like glamorized, and it's really not. Real estate, for whatever reason, has been glamorized, and it's really not. But if you do the basics first, then you can look at the fun, sexy things that everybody talks about. But if you don't have those first three things done, you have no business doing the others.
Yeah, completely agree. So if, let's say somebody is at that point, let's just continue to go down this road. Let's say somebody has those things set up, the 3 to 12 month savings, the Roth IRA, they're maxing out their retirement at work. And so they're starting to put money in assets that are making them above average return, so that maybe they are wanting to maybe buy their first house or buy their first piece of property. At what point do you feel like is that the appropriate purchase? Like, is there a specific amount, like specific percentage that people should be working towards of the home value that they're looking to buy? Or at what point is somebody ready to jump off to make that maybe first purchase of the kind of like the true appreciating asset?
Such a great question. So I think that it's important to know that obviously context. This is what I probably dislike the most about a lot of personal finance people. They give no context. You have Dave Ramsey who's telling you like, don't ever get debt. And then you have Grant Cardone who's telling you like debt to the nth degree, but they're not giving context to who they're talking to, which is why there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. So you have to watch who you listen to. Knowing that everyone's in a different place that's listening, I'll give some context. If you haven't yet bought a house, you get one opportunity. So if you're renting or you still live with your parents, you get one opportunity to do an FHA loan in America, which means it's a first-time home buyer. You only have to put 3.5% down. It's an incredible program to give people home ownership. What happens is most people, 90% of people, if not 95, they focus on the max size house they can get for that 3.5%. And then they have debt out their ears. And it'll take them 30 years until they're 60 years old to pay that off. Instead, what I would encourage everyone to do is, because you only get this one time, but you can actually use it. Some lenders will allow you to do it on a duplex, a triplex, or a very small quad apartment building. And the way that you can get around this is you actually live in one of the units for 12 months, because that's the rules of the FHA. Otherwise, you get all kinds of fines and penalties. But you only have to put 3.5% down. So imagine you find a duplex in an off area, which I know that this exists in like certain parts of rural areas. You find a duplex for $100,000, you put $3,500 down, you live in one of the units for a year, you put somebody else in the next unit next to you. Now all of your living expenses are zero because somebody else is paying that mortgage. When your year comes up, you move out, you put somebody else into that unit that you were using, and now you have a cash flowing asset that's already positive. Now you take that money and you rinse and repeat. You can't do the FHA loan again. So that's gone. But now you do 25 or 30% down, because that's what's typical for investment properties. And you buy the next one, and you continue to flip your way in to something that once you have, say, 300 from this property, 500 from this property, 1,000 cash flowing from this property, then you go consider buying the house that you want to buy, because now all of those rental properties pay for that house. And now that's how you get around. That is basically the example that we just got to of how to not take earned income to buy your house. You take earned income to invest. Then you take all of those cash flowing assets and the money that they print, and then you go buy whatever you want.
That's so good. I think if you guys aren't paying close enough attention, if you're not sitting down somewhere, then you need to go back and listen to this, because there's very clear step-by-step processes and numbers here that you can really apply to your life, because as she said, it's not necessarily a specific blueprint. Like we're not saying you have to do this at this time point. It's depending on your situation, but she's presented a framework here that you can very much apply to your situation in your life right now that is super, 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 super valuable. So make sure that you are writing this stuff down as well. Let's see what I wanted to go to. I want to go back to one of the things that you said in the very beginning. And I think I have an idea of what you mean, but one of the things you said in the beginning was you had a lot of leverage to be successful. Talk about what that leverage means, because I don't think a lot of people probably understood what that meant.
Yeah. So leverage is when your back is up against the wall and there's no other option. The only other option is poverty or staying exactly where you are. And for me, I had enough exposure that I saw what else was out there. And I just knew that there was something else. Again, nothing wrong with the environment that I grew up in or necessarily the people or anything. Like that's their choice. That was their option. But I knew something else was out there. And anytime we have leverage, it's like a rubber band that's kind of like holding us to the ground. The tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter it gets, the more impact we have to kind of pop off and create whatever it is that we want. So my leverage was I didn't want to ever have to depend on anyone for money. I had seen so many people, including my mom. My dad is a great guy, so she got lucky. But I know so many people and so many women that got married to the wrong person, that had a baby to the wrong person, and now their life is completely set for how they're going to show up. And now they have to make choices based off of money, and they can't get out of relationships or jobs that they hate or places that they don't want to live because they don't have options. And I chose that no matter what, I never want to depend on anyone for money so that I could go where I wanted, live where I wanted, do whatever I wanted. And so for me, that was a very real thing. I knew that I had to build something on my own, grow something so that then I had options. And that's really what money gives you. It's what success gives you is options, that you don't have to stay in that crappy relationship. You don't have to live, with that family that maybe is abusing you or not doing, like you have options. And so for me, I had a lot of leverage to get out of that environment and to create a better life.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think having your back against the wall is, if you've never had that before, then you don't know exactly what it feels like to really have that, metaphorical tiger chasing behind you that you have to run away from super, super fast. One of the things that I wanted to ask, especially because I know that a lot of people who are maybe millennials or maybe 20s, 30s right now think this way, or I've even heard them say this, is they'll spend money on experiences, and they're like, I just really value experiences and I value spending the time with the people, and that's really what I want to do. And I think that's kind of a popular thing nowadays, and I'm not saying it's wrong. Everybody has different values and everybody has different things that they want to spend on, but I think some people, it's not necessarily their value. They've maybe just heard somebody else say it, and so they adopt it because somebody else said it. So my question for you is, what do you say to that person who is in their 20s and 30s and maybe should be saving up to, buy their first duplex or what have you, when they're saying, I just want to spend my money on experiences right now and live life to the fullest?
Yeah. So all they're doing is choosing instant gratification over long-term gains. And all it is regurgitated on the internet. Like I see the same things regurgitated over and over and over again. And that's one of them. But that could be the same thing as the guy like, well, I just really don't like nice cars. You can like whatever you want, but all it is an excuse to trade short-term instant gratification for long-term growth. And just know that if that's your choice, that's anyone's choice. Nobody has to build wealth. People could work forever if that's what they want to do because they want instant gratification now. Just know what you're getting into. Just know that you're going to be doing that when you're 72 and you're going to be working when, I can tell you, when my friends were in college at 19 and I was figuring out how to pay 941s and how to balance inventory and how to gain customers and do direct mail because internet marketing wasn't there yet. When I was figuring all of that out, there were certainly moments that I was like, boy, I wish I could have some experiences. boy, I wish I could go to this bar. I wish I could go to the party. I wish I could hang out with my friends. But if you will do what few are willing to do now, you will get to do what few can experience later. And here at 40 years old, when I turned 40, before I turned 40, that was my goal going in. I want to do this for 20 years and I want to be out. And I worked my tail off. And now I can be in the middle of the day talking to you. I can take my dog for a walk. I can have any experience I want. Only now the experience is going to be a lot greater, a lot bigger, and I can bring anyone along with me than if I would have done it in my 20s. So it's not to say that you can't have the experiences. All it is you're going to have bigger, bolder, more audacious experiences later if you will trade that short-term instant gratification for long-term growth.
Yeah, that's so good. And look, it's not saying that you can't have any experiences. Maybe you just select the experiences that you have and you figure out a way to make them maybe cost less than otherwise. You can go with your friends, but instead of you having your own hotel room, maybe you all split an Airbnb, right? It's like making sure that you're intentional about the decisions that you're making with your money. Before the last question, I want to make sure I get you out of time, but I do have one more. I have two more. And this one is just kind of a curious thing. I feel like when somebody looks at you from a kind of a stereotypical standpoint, they wouldn't see you as somebody who grew up in a family that was not very well off. They might look at you and think, oh, she's just always had it. Her parents were probably wealthy and all that kind of stuff. Have you experienced that a decent amount? And if so, kind of how do you internalize that, I guess?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, from the time I was 19, people would come into my first business, because brick and mortar, and they'd be like, oh, can I talk to the owner? Like wanting to sell something. And I'm like, hi, and they're like, no, like the world has evolved a lot. Like being in business now as a female is drastically different than it was 25 years ago. I mean, it was rare to be a female in business. I remember my mom saying to me when I was in high school, she was like, well, do you want to be a teacher or a nurse? And I was like, what? She was like, that's what you should probably do. Do you want to be a teacher or nurse? And I'm like, I'm not that great with kids and I'm really not great with blood. So I don't want to do any of those things. I want to start a business, And so it was not a common thing. And we've certainly evolved in these last two generations that have come up, but it is something that's expected. And at another point in my life, I was probably I was probably a little too aggressive about it, not to ever make someone feel bad, but I would make sure to show up bigger and bolder so that people knew that I wasn't walking in with the guy, that the guy was walking in with me, right? Because there is a misconnotation with that it's like, oh, she's always had money, or, oh, she must be the side, the arm candy, or, oh, she might, like, there's all these things that come into play. And there's been times in my life where I've often changed who I am because of not wanting to, I've also maybe played small so I wouldn't make other people uncomfortable, or I don't say the thing that I know to say because I know the guy doesn't actually want to hear it from me. He wants to hear it from someone else. And then I think probably in my 30s, I just stopped all of that. And I'm just like, I am who I am and I am who I'm not. And there's certain things about me that there's probably a lot of people that don't like, but that's the way that I'm made and that's the way that I'm wired. So the more that I just became who I am and showed up as big or small, whatever the situation was, the more I felt okay with me. And I think that's the important part. Is because, again, if you change who you are because of other people's opinions, you'll also change to be like them. And so for me, I wasn't comfortable to change to be like them. So I'm also not going to change myself to fit their molds.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's powerful. I want to, before the last question here, Candy, I just want to acknowledge you for being bold and courageous and being curious really at such a young age, and taking, maybe really a leap of faith on yourself at such a young age, and starting your own business and then investing in real estate by the time you were 21, 22, and then for you to continue to work on yourself and not change who you are. Maybe you did that a little bit early on, but you've worked on yourself and grown out of that. So I really want to acknowledge you for that. And I want to acknowledge you for just, thanks so much for being generous with your time today and offering so much value for our audience here. I know that they have gotten so many practical pieces of value, but also some motivation as well, and some mindset tricks. So really appreciate all that. You guys make sure you go pre-order a copy of her book, I guess depending on when you're listening to this, wealthhabitsbook.com. I know that the book is not just going to be motivating, but it's also going to give you a lot of practical stuff, just like you got here today, like tangible things that you can read and then apply immediately right after. So make sure you go get Wealth Habits, 6 Ordinary Steps to Achieve Extraordinary Financial Freedom at wealthhabitsbook.com, and follow her on Instagram at Candy Valentino if you don't already. And Candy, last question is that I believe that getting closer to the best version of yourself is a constant journey. I don't think we ever actually get to that best version. And I also think it's a unique journey. I think the way I'm going to get there is going to be a little bit different than the way that you get closer to the best version of yourself. So the last question is for you personally. If there are 3 things that you could currently do or 3 things that you could currently work on to get closer to the best version of Candy Valentino that you could possibly be, then what are those 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on?
This is something that I work on constantly. It's easy to up level yourself in your life when you don't have anything. It's probably hard for some people to believe that, but until you've been through the journey, it's really easy to operate from a place of leverage when you want to get out of poverty. But when you get comfortable and you have a level of success, it becomes a lot harder to motivate yourself, to push yourself to move forward, because you kind of have everything that you just sought after to build, right?
Right.
So one of the things is I am constantly setting a new goal, setting a stretch, always making sure that I'm not comfortable, because that mediocrity can start to settle in. Even when other people think that you have a certain level of success, you have to constantly be stretching yourself. So that's one. It's always like, how do I make myself poor again so that I can use those scrappy things that I know in order to show up? And it's amazing. I don't go to poverty level, but there are times that I leverage a lot on the line so that I show up in a new way. And it's crazy what you can create when you do that over and over. So that's one. Number 2 is, I would say I've worked from such a hard place of hard work and grind and grit that this next chapter in my life, I'm just trying to do it with a little more ease. Still working hard, still working really hardcore and focus. I always say someone might be smarter than me, better looking than me, or be more connected with than me, but they're not going to outwork me. But this next chapter and season in my life, I'm just trying to do things with a little more ease. So I ask myself these questions every time. Anytime I'm about to do something, anytime I'm stumped on something, I say, what am I missing? And I will obsess on this. What am I missing? What am I missing? Number 2, how can I make this easier? How can I make this easier? If I'm up against a wall and I can't figure out this next step, how can I make this easier? And number 3, how can I make this more fun? Because fun was never an option for me. I always just wanted so much to get out of poverty and build this, build that. But then what happens is when you're wired that way, you actually get there and you don't take time to acknowledge that you made it. And you just keep pushing. And so now I'm trying to have a little more fun with how I do things. So those are 3 of the questions I would say in number 2. And number 3, this has been a guiding thing for me, because again, it's not about what we acquire. It's not about what we build. It's not about the wealth that we have, but it's who can I help? Who can I serve? How can I leave a legacy beyond me? And I think that's a fluffy line that people say, but how do you actually implement it? Starting a nonprofit when I was 26, I wanted to really give back and serve. And so I've done that for now the last 16 plus years and have been really involved in the mission, but I'm constantly looking at how can I do something more than that? Like, what am I missing? And what could I really be contributing to other nonprofits, other charities, other founders? And so I'm always looking through that lens of how can I serve more in the best way, but also keeping in mind those other 2, right? How can I make it easy? How can I make it fun? And just what am I missing in that process? So I think those would be the 3 I would tell you.
Yeah. Well, those are great. Well, I appreciate your time today, Candy. I know everybody else does as well, and they learn so much. So y'all, again, make sure you go follow her on Instagram at Candy Valentino, and also go grab the book Wealth Habits at wealthhabitsbook.com. Really appreciate it today, Candy. That's all we got.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.